For your listening pleasure, here's Pulizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Well, thank you, baby Jesus, that Robert Rose is not on This Old Marketing this week. No, seriously, I miss him. But as you know from last week's This Old Marketing, Robert had the stage. He was able to speak on whatever he wanted. I, Joe Pulizzi, could not come back at the Robert Rose. And, I didn't like it. By the way, he did a great job with this special episode. If you didn't catch it on Valuable Friction, make sure you do that last episode. But, just watching him flail sometimes without his trusty sidekick, I got to tell you, it was hard to take. It's hard to take. But this is my turn. No Robert Rose. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today. Special episode. During the holidays, we're trying to go a little bit easy on you, but we're also want to teach. And, we're all about consistency. So we just can't let 1 week go without talking your ear off. So we're going to actually do something here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about unconventional content marketing tips for 2025. Some of them might be a little bit more conventional, but I've been talking about this for a little bit, trying to tweak this presentation, and we're going to go through it. Now, a lot of you listening, obviously most of our listeners, you're not watching me right now as I'm talking to you maybe on YouTube. But if you want to see the presentation in all its glory, just go to the This Old Marketing YouTube channel and you can pull it up and you can see all the things that I'm talking to. But it will still hopefully be just as valuable if you're running or you're trying to ignore somebody talking at a meeting or maybe going to a class, whatever the case is. I'm absolutely happy to help. So we're going to talk a little bit today about unconventional content marketing. And what I want to start out with is there are 3 books that were critical to sort of my marketing education: Think and Grow Rich, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I know you're like, whoa, those have anything in common at all? Absolutely, they do. And what they have in common is they taught me, from the ages when I started reading them, probably 18 to 23, that if you want to be successful in anything you do, if you want to be a millionaire, you want to have a successful business, if you're an entrepreneur, you have to create assets that you can actually control. And if you are launching a business and you want those assets to perform successfully, you want to drive multiple lines of revenue from those assets. So we want assets and we want diversification of revenue from those assets. And when I talk to people about this, I usually come up with the question, well, how do you become a millionaire? What's the difference between a millionaire and somebody that's sort of struggling paycheck to paycheck? And the difference is, if you are an individual, let's say you're listening to this and you're not a millionaire, you got a little bit in the bank, you got lots of expenses, you're maybe struggling a little bit financially, you probably have 1, maybe 2 sources of revenue. You have your regular paycheck and you have maybe an investment account. If you are a multimillionaire, you probably have multiple businesses. You have multiple products and revenue lines from those businesses. You have multiple forms of real estate. You probably own some. You probably rent some out. You've got all kinds of different investments. You're probably fully diversified. That's what a millionaire looks like. So they're making money 7, 8, 9, 10 different ways as they go. Now, that sets the stage for what the business of content was like in the 2000s. So I actually started in content marketing. It's funny, Andy Crestodina emailed me the other day and he was getting some quotes for a project he's working on. And he said, Joe, how long have you been doing content marketing? And I said, believe it or not, it's been over 24 years. I started in February of 2000. Sounds like an SNL skit or something like that. In the practice of content marketing. And the business of content in the 2000s was sort of like this. You had an article or a blog on your website. You maybe had an email newsletter. You did some proprietary research. You had a print magazine. You probably had an in-person event or a workshop. You had books. And then in the late 2000s, you started a podcast. That's how the business of content looked. And what was great about it is we were building assets. Loved it. Building all kinds of assets. It was wonderful. And that's where we get into the whole Content Inc. model. I first started talking about the Content Inc. model in my book, Content Inc. in 2015. Robert and I went into Killing Marketing, which is also a great book, which talks about marketing as a profit center, which we'll talk a little bit about later in this presentation, where once you build a loyal audience, then you can monetize that audience in 10 different ways: directly in the form of like advertising and sponsorship or events, or indirectly, which are content marketing KPIs, where I want to drive product sales, service sales, create more loyal customers, create better customers in some way, better yield, whatever the case may be. So it was all about building content assets and content brands and then driving revenue from those. And that helped you if you were a media business, and it helped you if you were going into content marketing. Okay. Well, what happened in the I guess the late aughts, if you will, and then maybe for most of us, 2011, 12, 13, basically after the Great Recession, we got into the glorious gift of social media, which we're all thinking today, yeah, it was wonderful for a while. And now, especially as we've gone through this election, it's just horrific. I wish there was a world without social media, but you know what? That's what we live in. It's tied to all sorts of social and mental problems, but that's not what this presentation is about. But we got the gift of social media and we're like, oh, wonderful. The formula then changed from building assets and driving revenue from those assets to, oh, we're going to supply the content. These social media channels like Twitter at the time, Facebook, then on into Instagram, then into TikTok, they're going to supply the audience. So we didn't need to own the asset anymore, but we felt, oh, it's totally worth it. The exposure is totally worth it. So if you remember what we just talked about with the business of content in 2000, which was basically we're creating lots of assets, our email newsletter, articles on our own website, our own print magazine, our own event, our own book that we're selling directly. That completely changes. So the business of content in 2010 are, oh, I'm going to be on Instagram and TikTok. I might still keep my email newsletter, but then I'm going to go to Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. If I'm selling books, I'm not going to sell directly. I'm going to sell on Amazon, which again, we don't have control over that data again. And then maybe I'll still keep that podcast. So we've got a couple assets that are going for us. Email newsletter for sure. Podcast so, because we don't have any control over the distribution of that because we're going through Spotify and iTunes or Apple Podcasts now. So it really, really sort of changed. What we did was we traded our future assets for reach and distribution. I'm not saying it was wrong, but it happened and we all did it. And here we are today into some of these issues, which we'll talk about in a second. But social media gave us Mr. Beast. Social media gave us Kim Kardashian. Social media gave us that crazy song, which is probably was funny and probably not so funny anymore, where they're eating the cats and they're eating the dogs and all that. But things just happen quickly and people are going for virality and they're trying to get their 15 minutes of fame. And what the example that I thought of and that I've been using for a little while is this game called Flux. And it's an interesting game. So Flux is a card game, and the rules change in the middle of the game depending on the cards you use. So maybe you played this game before, but you're playing along and somebody throws out another card and everything changes. The rules completely change. And I think about that with what happened to social media. Social media, the rules changed. We didn't know that our customers couldn't see our content anymore. We didn't know these algorithms were going to change so much. We didn't know that we would lose the impact of search with what Google was doing with their own algorithm and then on into AI. So if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, I'm showing the decline of organic search is primarily due to the evolving social media algorithms that prioritize user experience over brand exposure, meaning all these different platforms, they didn't care about you. They don't care about you selling products and services. They don't care about anything but their own business models. And they prioritized other content rather than your own content. And so we had all these strategies to build up social media. And where are they now? Instagram continues to change their algorithm to make it more like TikTok, which apparently is not going to get banned anymore with the second term of the Trump presidency. And Instagram also plays in the whole idea that they're trying to update their algorithm to let more first-time content creators have more visibility, if you will. And which you've been trying to build an audience for a while, forget you. So it's even more difficult as a regular content contributor. Then you've got generative AI in search. We don't know what's going on there. Are we even going to, we did the 0-click thing, but are we even going to be able to see our links anymore? Probably not. So what? The algorithms won. We have no control over who sees our content. Even our followers may not see it anymore. We could get banned at any time. The rules will change, and they will continue to change. And if you want to play that game, you can play that game, but there might be a better way. My friend Jay Klaus, who I absolutely adore his business model and what he's doing, he did a tweet a few months ago that said, the goal of social media is to decrease your dependency on it, not to increase it. Let's say that again because it's so critical. The goal of social media is to decrease your dependency on it, not to increase it. I say that twice because of the fact that a lot of us think that, hey, we have to bow down before the devil that is social media, and I don't know if we have to. I think there might be a better way. And if you're on there, our goal is ultimately to try to build assets from that rented land. So what do we have for the business of content in 2020? Well, it probably looks something like, for you, you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok, you're on LinkedIn, you got an email newsletter, Twitter X is in there, Facebook, YouTube, Amazon podcast, we've got that in there. How do we make this adaptation? And what I want us to do is I want us to be like Marty and Doc in Back to the Future. And I really want to go back. I think taking the business model back to the way it looked more like from the 2000s is the way to go. I really, really do believe that. So the business of content in 2025, I think you choose a social media channel. You actually absolutely have a show of some kind. Is it on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube? I think you're on 2 of those, maybe. If you, depending on the resources, maybe it's just 1. And you know what? That's completely okay. And then you have an email newsletter, your website content that you control. Then you're building out some communities where you have a little bit more control. You maybe do your own courses and free webinars. You have some in-person and online events. You have your direct sale of books. And then you have your podcasts. So what you're doing is, yes, you're using and leveraging a little bit of social media, but you have now created some assets where you can have direct conversations with your customers. There's no middle person in between blocking that. You get the data from that. You can leverage that data to create better content and leverage that data to do all sorts of wonderful things so you can measure your marketing now. So what I want you to do is take your content land back. And I think there's a business case to be made for it. I'm trying to make it. You're probably shaking your virtual head saying, no, social media is where it's at. TikTok, I'm on TikTok 2 hours a day. Fine. You can do that. But I think from a business standpoint, we can leverage those social media channels, but we don't have to necessarily go all in. I want you to go all in with the assets that you can create. So the rest of this presentation is going to be about what I would do if I were you. And you are either a marketer at a business to business company, business consumer company, maybe for a nonprofit, or you're a content creator influencer. I think that all these tips will help you in some way think about your business a little bit differently. And the number one thing is I think we all need to look at our content tilts and our content niches, and we need stronger differentiation. Now, mind you, I always want to send a reminder out right now that your customers don't care about your products and services. They care about themselves. They don't care about you at all. So in order to break through all that content clutter, we have to be so distinct and different, and then consistently deliver on that differentiation. How do you want to be known? What will you stand out? What will you do to stand out? How are you going to break through all that content clutter? And why should why should your customers, why should your prospects, why should your audience care in any way? I'm kind of going through these really fast, but these are so critical. These are like core content marketing questions that you need to think about as we go through this. Now, the one thing that I learned from Andy Crestodina's presentation, he's given it a couple times, but I love it because it's a great use of ChatGPT. So now most of you have some form of ChatGPT. I have the paid version, the $20 a month, which I think is well worth it. And what Andy goes through is this idea of, okay, we want to build more differentiation. And to do that, we want to talk to our persona more. Sometimes that's possible. Sometimes we can set up our listening posts on social media. We can email our customers. We can do a survey. We can do lots of things. But I really like this idea of building a place on ChatGPT where you can talk to your persona. So what you do is you build out a new thread in ChatGPT and you say something like, hey, build me a persona of a marketing consultant. This is our persona, one of our personas for Tilt Publishing. So build me a persona of a marketing consultant who speaks, writes books, and creates content online in the form of articles, podcasts, and social media to attract and retain business. Their consultant business would be in the form of regular enterprise client work or individual coaching. And what we ultimately want to sell them is the idea of, hey, we want you to do a book. We think creating and distributing a book is integral to your business model. So I go ahead and plug that in to ChatGPT, and I want to know who's the type of person, the needs, requirements, the responsibilities, the challenges, how they buy, and ChatGPT will help me work through that. Now, the thing that Andy always reminds is AI stands for assume incorrect, which I love. So assume that this is incorrect to start, and we're going to whittle this down and edit this so that we get more and more fine-tuned, and the correct answers will come. But when it spits out, which it does a really good job of spitting out a basic persona, go ahead and tell it what it missed. I like this. I don't like this. The way that we did it for Tilt Publishing, I went ahead with ChatGPT and said, give me the persona, but then I updated it and actually uploaded the persona that our Tilt Publishing team put together. And that merged into something that was pretty powerful, I think. So I went ahead and did that, created that vision. And then what I love is then you could ask it anything day or night. What information would help you in your search? What social media posts are you likely to click on? What research studies support your decision to go with a book or not? What do you hate most about writing a book? On and on and on. Whatever the questions are, start asking it the questions. And this is what I love is it's so difficult to talk to your customers today, right? You feel it is. Maybe it's not, but you feel it is. Well, let's create something in place of that so you can get you pointed down the right direction. Maybe the best usage of ChatGPT. And then what you do is you take that little thread, you name it, you save it, you keep training it and use it all the time. And it will grow and will get smarter. And it will be a very successful agent to work with you on some of the things as you go forward with your differentiation. And then that gets you into your content mission statement. And from that, you've got that persona already and you want to figure out, okay, I want to do my mission statement. Our content is where audience X finds information Y for benefit Z. Again, we want to make sure we do a content marketing mission statement because we know from the research at Content Marketing Institute that brands with a documented content mission statement are 3 times more likely to succeed with their content marketing. And if you're a content creator and influencer and you don't have a content mission statement or an editorial mission statement, what are you doing? Who are you targeting? What are you going to tell them? And what's the audience benefit? You need to know that at all times. And if you have a team, you want to share that with your team at all times. So make sure you have a content mission statement and that it is documented. All right, that's the first part. It's just you're doing lots of stuff already with content. Let's double check your mission statement. Let's double check your differentiation and make sure that we can win this battle going forward. My number 2 thing to do, if I were you, is grow employee creators. I think our employees are our most valuable marketing asset. I think we underutilize them. And what I want you to think about is I want you to visualize a team store. When you go into a team store, you're like, okay, if you're a Dodgers fan, you're looking for Freeman or Ohtani. If you're a Guardians fan like I am, I'm looking for Ramirez or Thompson or Noel or whatever the case is. I want you to build your employees into your customers want to get their jersey, want to become fans of your employees. So basically, you're creating internal business creators. I think this is the next huge wave that's going to happen. And if I were you and you have anybody on your team, I'm going to figure out how do you take them as part of your marketing and lift them up. This could be on your marketing team, but it's probably not. They're probably in engineering or they're in manufacturing or they're in operations or wherever they're at. Well, you've got to find your shining stars, and then you want to put as many resources as you can behind them. So basically, your content marketing initiative becomes more like a creator resource department. So you find an internal subject matter expert on whatever your content niche or mission statement is about, and have them own one channel. Is it a podcast? Is it a video series? Is it a regular series on LinkedIn, a blog, whatever it is? Help them to produce that content consistently over time as part of your content marketing initiative, and then integrate it with everything you're doing from a content marketing perspective. And I love India Manufacturing. They manufacture industrial soldering equipment. They used to have, for their blog, they used to have like 16, 20, 25 different engineers create content. Now they have one, which is Dr. Ron Lasky. He's the creator that they put everything behind. He's the one that everybody thinks is the rock star when they go to shows. Not that hard, but Dr. Ron basically owns that blog. And this creates more leads for Indium than anything else that they do. So really, really important part of the marketing strategy. Now, give you an example of me. So, okay, I'm an individual employee, part of Lulu. Lulu bought the tilt, so part of Lulu. And then how does this work for them to help me be a creator influencer, if you will? So, okay, I'm the employee. We have the content brand, which is the tilt. So there, and then you've got Lulu owned by the company. So what I want to do is I'm going to make sure I'm creating content for the tilt, but basically it's not coming from the tilt. It's not coming from Lulu. It's coming from me. It's coming from me, and you want everything to come. So think about it this way. Let's say you have a newsletter targeting a certain group of a certain persona or audience. If that newsletter is coming from your overall brand, if you will, or it comes from your content brand, you would be better off with that coming from a Dr. Ron or a Joe Pulizzi or a Robert Rose. You want it to come from the creator. So you take the creator, that you help that creator build that platform out. That platform leads to speaking, interviews. You help them maybe create a book. You integrate that with your social. That leads to a newsletter. And then you've got your KPIs. You can totally measure that and say, okay, well, people that are subscribed to this email through all this path, I can figure out, okay, they're buying more. They're staying longer. They're better customers. They're buying this new product line. Whatever it is, that's how we can make it work. And if you don't believe me, look at any successful media company today. Look at the New York Times and look at their newsletters. If you look 10 years ago at all the newsletters, email newsletters that the New York Times had, they were all like names, like the well-being newsletter or the political news of the week newsletter, or the interpreter, whatever. And they were just a logo. That's fine. But now more and more, they're individuals. John McWhorton, Jessica Gross, they're focusing on the internal journalist or creator, and the emails are coming from that person, that human to human. It's really, really essential, and it works really well. Now, I don't know if I want to talk about this, but I have to mention there's a lot of organizations that are looking at creating like an AI creator. And if you look at what Ukraine did, Ukraine unveiled their AI, generated spokesperson. It's not an individual. I don't know how I feel about that, but as you know, more and more with these podcasts are coming out that they seem more and more human. Lil Miquela is out. An agency created Lil Miquela. It's on TikTok and Instagram. On TikTok, I want to say she, but I think it's an it. Has 3.5 million followers. Totally AI generated. All the posts are AI generated. So I want you to focus on your internal marketing champions, your employees. But we have to acknowledge the fact that some people are going to do this synthetically. Just, you're a marketer, you're smart, you know which directions to go for. You've heard me talk about this a million times. The next one is hunting for assets. When I started in publishing and I was given my first P&L, so I had to oversee the revenues, sales, and costs, and figure out what our earnings were for our custom media division when I worked at Pent Media. I was told that half of my growth should come organically using the staff I have, or if I need to hire some people, where we're going to create some new ideas, a new event launch, a new podcast, whatever it's going to be to grow the business. And then the other half was through acquisitions. And that's how publishers do it. We always want to say, hey, if it's already out there and it's created, we don't want to build something new. We want to go ahead and buy it because we can get to market faster. Something's already been created. That's the direction we want to go. Almost no marketers do that, which is a big failing that us marketers have. So we're seeing more and more of this. I talk about the Arrow Electronics example from a few years ago. Arrow wanted to be the leading informational resource for electronics managers in the B2B space. They're like, well, how do we do that? Well, they went and talked to UBM Technologies media portfolio. They wanted to get rid of a bunch of their content brands, and they went ahead and bought, I think at the time it was over 30 different content brands. And now when you ask me, like, who's the leading informational expert or the leading media company in the B2B electronic space, I would say it's not a media company, it's Arrow Electronics. And by the way, there's a great case study in killing marketing that we wrote, I think, in 2017. You can find it online as well, but it's a really good. Victor Gao ran that program, did a great job. And then more recently, the Hustle, 1 million plus emails of entrepreneurs, and HubSpot wanted to target that audience. So HubSpot said, well, do we have to create this, or can we just buy it? They bought it for what we're told was about 6% of annual sales and marketing budget. So they bought it for nothing for them. It worked out really well. Everything's going great with this program. They launched a podcast network off the back of a lot of this stuff too. So I want you to think about, like, what's your wish list? Where are your customers at? What are the YouTube shows going on? What are the podcasts going on? What are the newsletters? And you should make your list. So make your list. Make sure you do. Like, you should know, like, the top 10 places that your customers are hanging out and the creators running those, and at least make yourself known to them. Start with some partner programs with them, because it doesn't happen right away. And then figure out, maybe do some kind of a program with one of them and figure out if it's, hey, that podcast would be a great podcast under your content portfolio, or that newsletter would be a great newsletter under your content portfolio. We're not going to see it yet. I've been talking about this for a while, but I think by 2027 or 28, acquisitions are going to be just a standard thing that content marketers do, because there are so many content creators out there that are building some amazing audiences. They found their niche, they're delivering consistently, but they haven't been able to monetize really well. It's really, really hard to move from audience to monetization. Well, you don't need that. You don't have that problem, because you probably have products and services you could sell. My next recommendation, and you've heard Robert and I talk about this forever, start killing some things. The average mid-size enterprise creates content in 13 to 16 different ways. So basically, we're taking content, we're spreading it all over the place. And if we look at, no matter what size company or what budgets you have, we all have limited resources for our content marketing strategy. So you'll take all that content energy, if you will, and you say, oh, I'm going to do the blog and the podcast and research and e-news and social media and the event and everything else that you're trying, documentary and everything else that you're trying to do. And if you spread it all out initially like that, without first like building a substantial audience in one or two places, you're going to be jack of all trades, master of none. And you're just doing stuff. Where I want you to take all that content energy and put it to one or two things. You want to have the leading email newsletter for that niche in your market, and the number one or number two podcast in your market. You do that really well. You don't really have to do much else. Add in a little feeder in one of the social media channels, and you got yourself a great, simple content marketing strategy. And then when you get to that point and you're building a minimum viable audience, then you can go out and take that to the next level and start to diversify, if you will. Email first. Of course, you got this from the intro when I was talking about the content business model. Email is the one platform where we get to have the data and have some control over what's going on. And it is a rent-to-own strategy is what we want. So if we get on any of these social platforms, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Pinterest, on TikTok, whatever, our ultimate goal is to move them up the hierarchy. So social media is the bottom of the hierarchy, and we want to get them up to print subscribers, email newsletter, controlled membership, whatever the case is. We want to move up the hierarchy where we don't have any organization in between you and your relationship. And that takes a remarkable targeted e-newsletter. And if you look at most of the e-newsletters that are done, this is one that I'm just showing from a college. That's just, the calls to action are just terrible. Stay connected. Contact us today. Jeez, that's the newsletter, folks. No, this is like the most important thing you have. Make the case for why they should subscribe. So that's where you go back to your ChatGPT and you go back into your persona development and you go say, hey, create me 3 examples of a newsletter sign up call to action based on the mission statement. So you can start to figure out, and then you take that call to action and you put that into your website. If you go to the joepulizzi.com website, the first thing that you'll see on the homepage, I'm showing it now, the one newsletter you'll actually read, showing 50,000 subscribers that receive the orange letter delivered every other Thursday. You'll get actionable life, marketing, and business tips for content entrepreneurs. Probably could be better. That's not bad though. So think about that. This is so important. Everything we do should lead to getting opt-in permission so that you can build a relationship, trust over time with them that will ultimately lead to positive purchase behavior. So when you do this, when you do your email newsletter, you need 2 things, just like Norm Peterson from Cheers. I'm dating myself. I'm sorry. Must-see TV Thursday night. 1, show up on time every time. Norm did that. Walking in to get his beer, and every time he did, he has something interesting to say. So the 2 things you need: consistently deliver when you be valuable, be interesting, be differentiated. Winding down here, just a couple more things quickly that I was thinking about. Everything you do, I believe, needs to be a show of some kind. There's a really good example. We talked about it on the podcast before of Mohawk Chevrolet, outside of New York City. I don't know exactly where they are, but they do Mohawk Chevrolet. They don't just do social media posts on TikTok or Instagram. They do their little The Office skit. So if you go to Mohawk Chevrolet's TikTok page, you will see that they take The Office and they take the carrot. It's the same type of feel, and they run through that. This is just a regular Chevrolet. This is not like Chevrolet, the brand Chevrolet. It's Mohawk Chevrolet, and they've got 1.7 million likes on their TikTok channel for a used car dealership. Come on, this is great because they created a show out of it. All right. And then double down on print. We came off the election and there was so much talk about short form video, and I get it. We're all, TikTok, Instagram, short form video, YouTube. So everything's video. Yes, I'm sure you're all doing your video thing and there's no problem with that. But you know what? Nobody's doing print. You know what everybody still has? Most of the people you're targeting live somewhere. This is a stat from Association of Magazine Media. Last year, 3/4 of U.S. adults said they'd read a print magazine within the last 6 months. And people under the age of 45 are most likely to be doing that reading. I know you don't believe me, but look around sometime. Go out somewhere. Even my kids who are in their 20s. Yes, they're on their phones a lot. Yes, they're on the computer a lot. But you'd be surprised how often they pick up a book. They pick up a magazine. It's a big opportunity there. 100% delivery and no competition. If you have the address of the person, it will most likely get delivered. And you know what? I can pretty much guarantee right now your competitors aren't doing it. You know who is doing it? Amazon's doubling down in it. Walmart's doubling down. Mazda's doubling down. There's a lot of big brands that are doubling down on print right now. Red Bull never went away. You can still see the red bulletin at every airport kiosk in the world. It's a big opportunity. I like it because nobody's there. It's you don't have to fight through all the content clutter that's out there. And then I would recommend distribute it quarterly. Use as a sales support tool. So get input from your sales team. You can get partner support to get funds to pay for the print. And then the last one is driving diverse revenue. We talked about this from Killing Marketing. I believe marketing is going to be a profit center. There's a really, really good example. I'm just showing the content revenue model right now, but I love Health Essentials blog from the Cleveland Clinic, where that blog, yes, it drives more patient visits, which is the goal. That's the content marketing goal for that blog. but they sell advertising, they sell research, they do custom content that more than pays for the cost of operations of that. That's it. I think that's the future. So if you're going to do advertising and sponsorship of your newsletter or a conference and an event that you can get people to come and pay, like we do for CEX, Content Entrepreneur Expo, premium content in the form of books, there's a big opportunity there. So that's sort of my unconventional content marketing pitch, if you will. I think there's a lot of opportunity. Some of this is really, really old school. But I've got some closing thoughts. And before I get to those closing thoughts, I got to pay the bills.
So, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write 1 million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
There are a million podcasts out there, so which one should you follow? Well, why not try My First Million, hosted by Sam Parr and Sean Puri. It's brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. My First Million features famous guests like Alex Hormozzi, Sophia Amoruso, and Hassan Minaj sharing their secrets for how they made their first million and how to apply their learnings to capitalize on today's business trends and opportunities. You can find My First Million wherever you follow your favorite podcasts.
Still turns its back.
You know, it's funny, as I watch, thank you to the HubSpot Podcast Network for supporting this podcast. What's interesting is that Robert does his opening, and I always forget that he has all the important stuff like, hey, This Old Marketing is brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, which I didn't say. I was so busy making fun of Robert that I totally forgot to talk about our sponsor. So I'll give him an extra little love somewhere else, so they'll be fine. They're like, you know, they say, Joe, you know, dealing with Joe, well, it's kind of dicey, but in the long run, I come through for you, HubSpot. So thank you for all your support. This is the last one I want to touch on before closing thoughts. I think this idea of physical experiences, in-person events is so critical in this age of social media and devices that we're talking about. There's another stat that's really interesting. Approximately 3 in 5 Gen Z and millennial respondents confirmed that they've traveled in the past 12 months and or plan to travel in the next 12 months for in-person events like concerts, sporting events, comedy shows, and book readings that are more than 50 miles from home. Some research from WKGC that's really interesting there. What's why I like this idea of an event. And by the way, you know, my wife and I and kids, we like going to comedy shows all the time. It's amazing the younger folks that are going to these comedy shows. With all the electronic stuff, people want to meet and be around other people. Again, I've been in the event business for over 25 years now. People go for the learning, yes, but number one is the networking. They want to meet other people that are dealing with the same challenges that they're challenged with. And I believe that if you do this correctly, you can develop a moat around your business, like Salesforce has done with Dreamforce, like HubSpot has done with Inbound. It's very hard for other people in the technology space to get any kind of competitive advantage over those companies because they have the in-person relationships. Yes, they're doing all the great things online, but the event brings it all together. One of the investment companies that we work with is Fisher Investments. You've probably seen their ads on television. But what they do really well is every quarter they go around the country and they meet face-to-face with prospects and their customers. That physical touch is so incredibly important. And I want you to think about, can you create the leading event in your industry? Or is there an event going on right now that you could buy? Like, for example, Lulu bought CEX from the Tilt, and that's worked out really well. By the way, August 24th to 26th, 2025, CEX. So big opportunity there when you think about that. I love the content marketing business because it's the only type of marketing where you can deliver value outside of the products and services you have. I believe the best marketers in the world are the ones that will deliver value in the marketing itself before you even get to the product or service. But if you do this, if you deliver on a valuable piece of content and you do it over a long period of time, consistently, that time spent times that consistency leads to trust, and trust leads to all the good things that we want to deliver as part of our marketing KPIs. So I want you to take your content land back. I hope some of this has been helpful for you. This is stuff I think about all the time. I'm scared for a lot of you out there that have put so much into social media and so much into non-assets that you'll wake up tomorrow and it'll be gone. Actually, just as I'm recording this, just a couple of days ago, there was a YouTube creator that had over 10 million in their audience that they did put out some posts and it got flagged and they lost their account and they still haven't been able to get it back. Yeah, that can happen to all of us. It can happen to any one of us, and it's a problem. So I don't want that to happen to you. Leverage social that makes sense. Don't put all your eggs in that basket. Can you leverage social so that it will ultimately deliver them to an owned, controlled piece of content where you can get their data, where you can deliver something to them consistently and build a relationship without having that intermediary in the middle? So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. And you know what? My presentation was 2 minutes shorter than Robert's. So next week, we'll be back to our regular This Old Marketing show. But thanks for being with me. So we'll have to bring Robert back. Okay. It's okay. And you know what? Favorite thing I love about Robert is he says, this is your story to tell. Tell it well. We'll see you next week on This Old Marketing.
Hey, thanks a lot for making it this far in this week's episode, and thank you all for being a part of This Old Marketing. You can check out all the show notes of what we talked about today at thisoldmarketing.com, and it's also where you can leave us a review or a voicemail. We need those reviews and comments on whichever platform you follow us on. And if you haven't followed the podcast, please go do that and make sure you catch the latest and greatest episodes every Friday morning. We're on Apple and Spotify and all your other favorite podcatchers, of course, but we'd love it if you went over and subscribed to us on YouTube. That's right, YouTube. youtube.com/@thisoldmarketing. We'll see you again next week, folks, with another episode of This Old Marketing.